Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm glad to be back. It's been a few weeks for no other reason, but I've just been really busy. But wanted to talk about a couple things today and see if we could get any questions. But one thing I wanted to talk about today, actually, I got a few guests coming up. The biggest nuisance about like booking guests is obviously I can just do this on my own schedule, and most people will actually watch this after the fact anyway. But booking guests and just lining it up with my Friday schedule, which is usually fairly hectic, is a challenge. But we do have a few guests coming up. Two guests that we're going to be having relatively soon are Todd Mershon from Movement Mortgage is going to talk about some of the programs available and kind of what we're seeing out there, and the age-old question of what's going on with interest rates. The other person I'm going to have is a friend of mine from a coaching group. I'm in a real estate coaching group, Jody, who's a real estate agent in Austin, Texas. And interestingly, in Austin, they're having the opposite problem that we have here in New Jersey, which is that they are going through a excess of inventory. So homes are sitting on the market longer. So we are going to have those two guests in pretty shortly. But as I always offer, and pardon me for a second here while I try to plug in my hardwired internet. Um, as I always say, if there's any local businesses, they can be online businesses or they could be brick and mortar, whatever it is. If there's any small businesses that want to be interviewed on the podcast, I'm more than happy to have them. It could be literally any business. This isn't, as I mentioned, it's tough to schedule. So if people reach out to me, I'm much more happy to do that than to chase people down to try and get guests on the podcast. But if you know anyone that might be interested, just let me know. Or if it's you, let me know, and we'll be happy to have you. Viewership, as I said, during the lives is, relatively low, but this gets a ton of traction on YouTube. And also I can obviously just send you a YouTube link that you can share for your own social media if it's your business. Or your friend who has a business, they can share it via social media with a YouTube link. So it's a good opportunity for local businesses to just kind of get their face out there. And let me know if you know anyone that would be interested in that. But I wanted to do kind of a longer format of something I just posted on TikTok because it's a question I get sometimes. In my TikTok profile, I have a line item on there that says multi-offer specialist. And I want to talk a little bit about why that's written in there and what that means, because it's a very hot topic. And I actually just had this discussion with a client of mine. We were looking at an investment property literally right before I came here. And, it's something that's definitely worth talking about. So, there's a lot of real estate agents, right? There's just sheer numbers. There's just many, many real estate agents. A good portion of them, like, speaking even in terms of like our office, there's like, 20% of the agents that are in our office are full time doing this at a relatively high level. In this market, even some of those people are kind of falling off a little bit, just kind of not choosing not to participate as much in the current market. And that's fine. Um, but 80% of our agents are part-time or sell a few houses a year, also totally fine. But it begs the question in a market like this: if you have a multi-offer situation, how do you know that your agent is prepared to get an offer accepted? It's absolutely not easy these days. And a lot of work goes into different ways to get offers accepted. It's not simply about terms. And I think what we found in the industry more than anything else is that people are playing realtor roulette these days, thanks to, largely websites like Zillow or even just Google. They're just kind of, haphazardly choosing an agent. Choosing a real estate agent should not be a haphazard decision. It should be a very deliberate one. What I usually tell people when I first meet them is, hey, we met. That's great. You feel about me a certain way. That's fine. Either you're like, all right, great, we'll work with this guy, which, is plenty of my clients. We meet once and they're like, all right, this is fine. Or, maybe they're not sure. I don't know. Maybe, I walk away from that meeting and they're like, guy seems okay, but let's just check his credentials. So I always say, listen, if you want to like read reviews, first of all, I always have client references available, always. So if you ever want to talk to some of my former clients, I think more so on the listing side um, is where I would expect to see this. Honestly, no one's ever taken me up on it, but I do have clients that I keep in touch with that I ask occasionally, hey, if I had someone call you for, to use you as a reference to do business with me, would you be okay with that? And I have several clients that said absolutely anything they can do to help, and that's always appreciated by me. But if you just Google Craig Metz real estate, I mean, there's tons of reviews out there. So, but I mean, if you're not minimally doing that, you're kind of asking for trouble in this market because getting offers accepted is largely about terms, price, terms themselves, inspections, appraisal, use and occupancy, like all the considerations that go into building an offer, the strategy of building an offer. But on top of that, there's this huge element that no one really talks about, which is professional reputation. So, you know, my speaking for myself, but also the agents that I've mentored and coached is, paramount to everything is our professional reputation. And what I mean by that is, real estate transactions in general are complex and difficult, and there are challenges and hurdles and things that pop up. And my ability to handle those things as they come up, sometimes handle them very quickly, and sometimes we have more time. It's a more complex thing that's going to require a lot of research and a lot of phone calls and a lot of contacts. Um, that's not an innate ability of a real estate agent necessarily. If they're part-time, someone sells 2 3 homes a year or even less, they don't have those contacts in place necessarily. They don't necessarily have a reputation. They're basically just an unknown agent to a lot of other listing agents. So if a listing agent gets 20 offers, they probably know, five of those agents in any given situation, because especially now, because we get a lot of agents coming in from other areas because buyers are looking for homes deeply. So they're traveling. So, if I put a listing up here in Hunterdon, it's not uncommon, if I'm going to get 12 offers that, 8 of them are from agents that don't normally work these areas. That's just kind of how the market is now. So let's say I know 4 of those agents. This isn't like a favoritism thing. This is really looking out for my sellers. You know, let's just say that I got 12 offers. 8 of them are out just by terms. They just don't have enough money. They're not putting enough down. They haven't addressed the elephant in the room of appraisal, whatever it may be. They're just kind of out. With any given set of, they're all going to be presented to the seller, but I mean, it's usually pretty clear, like right off the bat, to me and my seller, that all right, these 8 we can kind of rule out. These are like backup offers because they're just not as good as the other 4. But then when you get to that top 4, one of the questions that my clients are always asking is, what do you know about these agents? The reason they're asking that is because of the complexity of the transaction. So, for example, if you have a Hunterdon County home here, let's say it's a 4-bedroom colonial, on 3 acres in Pittstown. I guess I'm describing my house. So, there's a lot of things, right? Septic system, well, um, you know, a lot of the construction around here is like mid to late 80s. So there's, definite questions as far as foundation and drainage and, all the things that pop up that we need to be concerned with. And obviously, I'm not doing an inspection. I have an inspector. But what comes out of that inspection are the things that I'm talking to my clients about, of things that are highly concerning and things that are really kind of minor. And we also have that knowledge of like what's customary and standard in the industry. So if you have an agent that doesn't know those things, the risk is that they get a little unwieldy on asking for repairs. So we've had situations where people say, hey, that furnace is pretty old. We're going to ask for a new furnace. And I'd say, hey, look, the furnace also works. So you can't really ask for a new furnace. They don't owe you a new furnace. You're buying a used house, you get a used furnace. And unfortunately, this one's 15 years old and doesn't look like it's been maintained great, but it is working perfectly. The seller is most likely just going to say no. But also, if you do too much of that, they're not just going to say no. They're going to say, we're gonna get out of this deal. You can definitely lose the house that way. The risk to sellers in those situations is basically time, because we probably do have backup offers. Again, speaking in the context of this market, we probably do have backup offers, but if a few weeks have passed, there's no guarantee that all those offers are still in the game. So that's not ideal. So what we're trying to do really is vet that up front and make sure that we're not going to experience any of those things. Another good example is a lot of people are waiving inspections. So agents are writing up offers with waiving inspections. My first question to those agents is always, have you talked to your attorney about this? Meaning the client's attorney. It's really not the agent's attorney, it's the client's attorney. Have you mentioned to the client's attorney that you are going to be waiving inspection? And if they know why I'm asking that, first of all, that's a good sign. And if their answer is yes, most definitely, we discussed it with the attorney, they're on board with it. Sometimes if it's like a condo or something, it's a little more standard because it's lower risk, obviously. But if it's the house I was just describing, 4-bedroom colonial in Pittstown on 3 acres, that's risky. There's a lot of things that could go wrong, obviously. And if you're just going to waive the inspection contingency, you're locked into that contract no matter what. Now, here's the thing. The other thing is that we're getting a lot of this loose language. Real estate agents are very good at many things, but writing up any sort of legally binding language is not one of them necessarily. So we get things where inspections are limited to, say, like common language would be health, safety, and structural. But if you think about, I want you to just think about any repair in a house, like literally anything that could come up. Let's say the gutters are falling off the house. In one section, the gutters are falling off. Is that health, safety, or structural? I mean, I don't know. Like structural, maybe, if that water is, dripping into one corner of the house and that house is, displaying that water is coming into the basement, that area, there's staining in the basement. Is that structural? Probably. I mean, kind of. But is that what they meant in their language? Who knows? So that's like not very good language in an offer. So my job as the gatekeeper of that offer as a listing agent would be to challenge them on that language. Well, what do you mean by that exactly? Now, it doesn't really matter what they say to me at that point, because at the end of the day in New Jersey, we use attorneys, and the attorneys are, all know that language basically means nothing, because anything could be put into one of those 3 categories. For the most part, I mean, I really would struggle to come up with an example of something that doesn't fall into one of those categories. So that language really doesn't mean much. I mean, what I've kind of told my clients is what that language really means is that we've had conversations about the expectations of inspection. Beyond that, it really isn't all that effective as a negotiating tactic. So if I'm sure a lot of agents are telling their clients, like, yes, we're going to limit inspections to health, safety, and structural. This is going to help your offer. It really isn't going to help your offer. Because if you didn't write that in, I'm going to ask about it anyway when I'm reviewing the offers. So, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about as far as professional reputation goes, is that agents that have worked with me before have a comfort level that I've properly coached my clients, and things like that aren't going to pop up. There's not going to be any surprises in the transaction or anything like that. So multi-offer specialist really comes down to all of those things. Is not only the terms, that's the easy part. That's what we all do. But again, a lot of agents kind of botch that part of it because they'll put in a super high price, but then no plan for an appraisal contingency. Number 2 is overall strategy, not just the terms, but what's the strategy here? What's our unique proposition to the sellers here? Because there certainly should be something. If there's, 12 offers, it's going to take something to get that offer accepted. Again, not just price and terms. It's going to take more of a vision. And then number 3 is that professional reputation. Now, I'm always careful when I talk about this because, like I said, it is proprietary. The reason I say it's proprietary is there are developed ways that I get these points across, because very often I'm making offers to agents I don't know. But I need to basically, in the course of the offer process, get this information to them that I will be easy to work with and there won't be any problems in the transaction. So the ways that I do that are not something that I share publicly. I share it with clients. I share it with agents that I coach and mentor. But it's not something that I share here, a very easy public forum. But you can be sure that if you were to engage me as a client, that we would have those conversations and I would tell you exactly how that works. So, these are the things to consider. So this is why I've kind of put that tag on my profile of being a multi-offer specialist because, I started doing this in a certain way several years ago. And when you list a lot of homes, and I've had the luxury of listing many homes over my career. I don't know my exact numbers. My total number is probably about 100 career sales, and if I say 45 of them have been listings, so I've sold 45 homes. If you can imagine how many offers I've gotten after selling 45 homes, you would understand that I've had a chance to look at how a lot of agents present their offers. I've said this time and time again, but I think that one of the most overlooked and frankly embarrassing elements of this industry is how bad some of the offers are presented. So much so that it's a disappointment when the terms are somewhat decent, but the offer is presented in such a way that you immediately are questioning that third element, which is the professional reputation, because immediately I'm questioning the reputation of that agent. But I like their offer terms. So here's the thing. There's two agents behind them that I know and I've worked with before and I trust. It's not a matter of favoritism. It's a matter of protecting my clients and saying, hey, I've actually worked with this other agent. Let me see if I can get them to, come up somewhat to the highest price that we've been offered, because this one on the highest price, this agent's been a loose cannon. But I know this other agent, I bet they'd come up, it's usually a small amount. It's usually like $4,000 or something. If they'll come up $4,000, then we'll gladly work with them. So that happens a lot. So you want to be with that agent that's going to be the one that gets that call. And that's where my strategy comes in. And I don't think people think about that, because again, I've talked about this again on social media. And if you're not following me on TikTok, please do. It's a part of my business that I'm trying to build out. It's at Hunter & Bourne Realtor. And I put a lot of this stuff up in very short, digestible format, as opposed to this podcast, which is arguably too long and not digestible. But it's so crucial that you don't go the route of what a lot of people do these days, which is they find the house first and they hit that button on Zillow that says contact agent or request a tour. You're just thrown into a lottery system. The agents that are paying to get in that lottery system are agents that aren't getting business otherwise. So think about it this way. You want to get a piece of pizza. There's 4 pizzerias in town. You know that one of them's really good. But maybe you assume there's always a line there and you just don't want to deal with that. There's one that's okay, may or may not, fill your need for pizza. And the other two are terrible, just terrible. You're going to regret eating that pizza immediately. If I said to you, the only way to get pizza in this town was to just reach into a box and pull out a piece of pizza, and it's from one of those 4 places, that's the pizza you get. That's how people are selecting their agents when they do that thing on Zillow. A lot of agents call, or a lot of potential clients call me and they say, hey, I saw your Facebook ad for this home and I wanted to ask you about it. And, the common confusion, much like those Zillow buttons, is that I'm the listing agent, which I'm not. I'm just advertising listings. And like anyone, it's an IDX. IDX is a technology that we use that takes, all the listings out of the MLS and puts them out there. And they think it's my listing. I'm very clear with them right off the bat, just so you know, that's not my listing, but I'm happy to help you purchase it. And they're like, oh, no. We only, we thought it was your listing. Listen, we all have the same listings. Like, it's not my listing, but I have just as much of a right to bring you to that than any other agent. You don't really want to go straight to the listing agent. That's not a good strategy, because you're going to put that agent in dual agency. A lot of clients don't like that. Selling clients don't like dual agency. And it's just really not a great strategy. In different types of markets, it might be a better strategy, but it's not a good strategy in this market, because now you don't have any representation. Now that agent is not working for you. They're working for the seller already. And now they're entertaining your offer. Now they're in a dual agency situation, and you don't have independent representation. You don't have anyone that can negotiate on your behalf or problem solve or do any of the things that we just talked about. So, thinking about those things and being a little bit more deliberate. people like this that I talk to, they click on my ad, they call me, they find out I'm not the listing agent, and they say, "Oh, you know what? We're just going to work with whoever finds us a house." I get that all the time. I'm like, that's not how you find an agent. The value of a real estate agent these days is not finding you a house. Now, are there situations where we will quote unquote find you a house? Yes. But the clients that are getting the found houses, if that person called me and said, "Oh, you know what? We're looking for a 4-bedroom colonial in Pittstown on 3 acres. We just haven't been able to find it. If you see anything, let me know." You think that's going to be my first call as an agent if I do find that house? Or do you think I'm going to call one of the clients that I have a long-standing relationship with that's looking for the same house? It's a very flawed approach. And I think it's kind of adding to this dialogue that this market is so difficult and it's impossible to get a house, because you have people like that that are just not doing the basic due diligence in order to put themselves in the best position to get a house. So people are getting houses these days. I'm here to tell you that. So it's just something to think about. But that is, if you do see me on social media and you see that multi-offer specialist, that is what it's referring to. So, and I'm happy to discuss that with anyone that's thinking about doing business with me, how that all works. And it's very simple. It's painfully simple, because quite frankly, all agents should be doing some version of it. Most are not. But that's pretty much it. I didn't have much else as far as market updates. I mean, still a lot of real estate being transacted out there. It is difficult. Inventory is still pretty tough. Seems to be getting a little bit better. I guess technically now we're in the spring market, so definitely should be getting better, but it is getting better to some degree. There does seem to be more things hitting the market. More opportunities are coming. Interest rates are down this week. The last I saw, 6.25 on a 30-year fixed conventional is pretty standard. Average, again, depends on your credit and everything else. But that's down from last week. We're still holding out hope that sometime this summer we're going to get into the fives. That is still what the experts are telling me. I don't know what that looks like. I know months ago they said that they thought it would be in the fives around May 30th. We're going to see if that happens. But they are down from last week. I mean, over the last many weeks, there's really been like really small adjustments in the mortgage rate. There really hasn't been any major movement in either direction. From the times I've done this podcast, which is when I tend to check the rate, because I don't usually check rates. I'm not the lender. But out of curiosity and being a professional real estate agent, I do check them all the time. But they've, over the past 2 months, it's varied from 6.125 to 6.5. So we're not talking about a huge spread. But we are still kind of expecting to see that go down. If it does go down, I do expect the inventory to respond and come up a little bit. I think that, you have two problems right now with the high interest rates from a real estate perspective, not speaking financially here, but there's two issues really. Number one is you have a lot of people holding 2.5% and 3% mortgages that refinanced not that long ago, locked themselves into a really favorable situation. And when they look at upgrading or even downgrading, we have situations where people are downgrading their home, leaving their 3% mortgage to pick up a new 6.25% mortgage, and they're downgrading their home and their monthly payment's going to go up. That's a problem. This is why we're seeing a lot of issues with inventory. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is people that are holding on to homes because they think that until the interest rates go down, the market's not going to be as good. The only problem with that thought, I mean, that's definitely holding up inventory. That is definitely a thought that's out there. Whether or not that's correct is another story, because the inventory is so dreadful that if you put something on the market right now, you are definitely going to quote unquote win. So it's a valid point in a vacuum. It's just not a valid point with the current situation with the inventory being so low. So all of this being said, I think it'll be interesting to hear from my colleague Jody, who we're going to have. I believe she's going to be here in, I think she said 3 weeks. I'll have to check. But she's going to tell us about the opposite situation in Austin, where they have too much inventory, which is kind of, it's hard to remember. When I first started in real estate about 4 years ago, it was pretty close to that situation. A house sitting on the market for 2 or 3 months was pretty customary. If I wanted to take clients out to show them homes on a Saturday, I could show them 5 homes. Now I really can't, because for any given client, the type of home they're looking for, there's not usually 5 options. So it's quite different than it was 4 years ago. I always joke with people. I mean, 4 years ago, my challenge, because I was new to real estate, was getting clients. But then once you got a client, it was just a matter of like, all right, well, let's find a home that you're interested in. I'd show them the 5 and I'd say, which of the 5 would you like? And they would tell me which one. I would call the listing and say, hey, we're going to write you an offer. They would say, fantastic. And in maybe 1 out of 10 cases, there were multiple offers, and that meant 2 or 3, not 10 or 20. So it's very, very different. We'll get back there someday. I just don't see it happening in the short term, but it'll be interesting to hear from an agent that's dealing with it right now. And then maybe she'll have some insight as to, how they got there, because, as far as I knew a few years ago, Texas, parts of Texas, I had clients that moved there, were having the same inventory issues. So I'd be very curious to hear from her. So that'll be pretty much it for this week. So if you have any questions or anything, hit me up in the comments on wherever you're watching this: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and let me know what you're wondering about. I'm always looking for future topics. I can get back to you via the comments too, but any of those platforms work. Follow me on social media: TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook at Hunterdon Born Realtor. And hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you all soon. Have a great weekend. Take care.